last 34 days been like for you and the department?
Is it only 34 days? Jeez. It's been intense. I mean, there's no question about it. You know, we work a lot of cases, a lot of tragedies, unfortunately, but the microscope is definitely on you in a situation like this. But you know, I've thought about that question a lot, and really, at the end of the day, it's not about what it's like on us. Really, it's about trying to get answers. It's about really fighting for Gabby, fighting to get answers for her family, and make sure that the person potentially responsible for her death is held accountable.
What was it like for you guys working in conjunction with Gabby's family and you know, trying to help them throughout this time?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people involved here, a lot of players, a lot of agencies. So I don't know that we've necessarily been the point people for them, but certainly having spent some time with Gabby's dad and stepmom here early on in this, for me anyways, that conversation played over and over again and really drove me, and I'm assuming all of our other officers, to keep pressing on. I mean, it has been it's been an odd case. There's been a lot of just difficulties with it that I say is unlike a lot of cases we work.
I was just going to say, have you guys ever seen a case that's like this, or a case of this magnitude here in Northport?
I'll tell you this, rarely are cases similar. I always think, oh, this one will be like, and there's always something different. Very rarely can you even correlate cases. There's always little nuances and stuff. So yeah, there's no doubt there's no other case probably like this in the world.
The search. When you guys first started, it was not easy for officers by any means. What did they go through?
What search? Which
Well,
part?
search for, well, you know, I know that you guys weren't searching for Gabby because we knew that she wasn't here, but searching
We
for...
were, because, you know, remember, when this initially got kicked off, we didn't know what we had. We didn't know... Gabby and Brian weren't people that we were ever even familiar with. They had moved here at some point in 2019. We had no previous interactions with them. What we know now is that they actually moved to New York in June. So we had people reporting a potential missing person from 2,000 plus miles away. We have this individual who's here with her car, we knew that, and the family refused to cooperate with just basic questions on how are you here, where is she? So that made things, you know, very difficult. Sorry, there's an ant crawling on my ear. So we certainly didn't rule out initially that she couldn't be here. So we had that element, and that was kind of the focus. You know, we're trying to get information from Brian. They invoke their rights not to speak. Okay, is Gabby? So we're focusing on trying to find Gabby. Brian was free to do whatever he wanted to do. It was certainly suspicious. We certainly had surveillance techniques being implemented within hours of our initial interaction. You know, so that's the first search, and then, you know, if we're going to the search in the Carlton, it's fast. It's all over the place. I mean, you know, usually you start out a little bit. We knew that the car had been there in the park, so you have a starting point. And then, you know, certainly the closer to that would be more likely. But a lot of that area where he was eventually found was searched, but with airboats. So that gives you an idea of the type of conditions that were there. It wasn't until just the last week, maybe week and a half, that some of that area dried out, and you know, that's why the park was opened. And that's why the family knew that that park was open, so that's why they wanted to go out and search. So a lot of coincidences. I get it, looks odd. Everything about this case has been odd.
when it comes to, continuing to search the park for that long, because what evidence did you guys have to keep pointing you in that direction, to keep putting resources there?
Well, we had looked, we had multiple agencies, probably more than 24 agencies with all of their tools, their bloodhounds, cadaver dogs, airboats, by air, drones, you name it, helicopters with heat sensing technology. It just, you kind of, after you've searched a lot of these areas that aren't underwater, you start going, well, we need to kind of search the water. And certainly that was on the table throughout, but it starts becoming more probable. And then with a lack of, but you don't know for 100%. And then there's a complete lack of any other credible information anywhere else. You just keep looking in the one place you got.
Okay. Once the FBI came in to assist and kind of take over things, what did that change for you guys?
Jeez Louise. Okay. So the FBI has been involved from the beginning. In fact, she was initially reported missing in Suffolk County, New York. So that's where we were an assisting agency until about Tuesday, which we now know was after he was more than likely probably deceased in the woods. So the FBI New York was a part of that conversation with the Suffolk County folks when there became some potential for evidence, and Brian being down here, now we're working with FBI Tampa. Then we start looking around out west. Now we're working with FBI Denver. We're all trying to do our part as a team to get things going, but a lot of cooks in the kitchen, no doubt.
What was communication between you guys like? And, what did you learn throughout this?
So I think the communication was pretty good. It's never easy when you have multiple agencies. You got New York, what do you want us to do? Enact that. And again, we don't know what we have at the time. So there is a lot of trying to figure out what's going on, what to do. So that's very obvious. I don't know what we would change. There's a lot of things that people Monday morning quarterback about this, but a lot of that's with revisionist history of information that was learned later. Looking back, why didn't you do this then? Well, we didn't have that information at the time. I think you learn from everything. Certainly no investigation is 100% perfect. Could have done different things. So I certainly think that there are lessons to learn.
We know that obviously that the skeletal human remains are Brian's now. What did Northport officers find that day?
So, we found all of that evidence that day. To paint a picture for you, there's a lot of bones. There's some physical evidence, and they're scattered about. We're talking animals, the water, the flow of water, the floating away of things, and Mother Nature doing its best in that situation. So certainly everything that's been found was really kind of the main stuff was found, and then you start spreading out. Like, okay, let's keep walking around, get the cadaver dogs, see if they smell stuff over there. So I don't know if I answered your question. But
location-wise, from like the entrance of the park, where would you say that was?
From putting myself in Brian's shoes, it's probably about a 40-minute walk out into the Carlton from the footbridge that enters there from the Myakkahatchee.
Notebook and backpack, obviously, were also found. Are those salvageable, and will those help with the investigation?
I think I'm hopeful. Certainly the backpack, I'm not unaware of what contents are in there. The notebook was wet. There'll be a process of drying that out in the most fragile way to ensure that any information that's in there can be gathered. Certainly, drying it out, and you don't just want to open it and start going through it. So I think there's a process of doing that, and that I'm hopeful that there'll be a lot of information in there.
Brian, obviously, we know is not here. Does that complicate the investigation into what happened to Gabby?
Does it complicate it more? Probably, but I think that we will get the answers here. I think that we live in a society now where there's such a digital footprint, and certainly there's been a lot of evidence gathered that's not been released and it wouldn't be appropriate to release at this time, which I think will help paint a picture there.
Northport PD's role in the investigation moving forward, what does that look like?
We'll be assisting the FBI with anything that they need. You know, if they feel like they need to go back out to the preserve for any way, we could assist in that. If they need any assistance with the Laundrie family, we can certainly provide that.
Okay. At the beginning, I know that the timeline was a little iffy. We were getting a lot of different information, and you yourself were kind of questioning the information that we were getting from the Laundrie family. What do you think about all of that now, and the info that you guys were getting?
From the Laundrie family?
Yes.
You know, can you be more specific on, like...
Well, you know, okay, so back around when Chief said, you know, yes, we know where he is, we know that he's home, and then a few days later, it's all of a sudden, actually, we haven't seen Brian. Brian went hiking, and he didn't come home. That was when you're like, you know, I don't really know what to believe.
Yeah.
Where does your mind go now, thinking back to all of that moment?
Well, I think anytime you begin an investigation with, we're not talking to you. You know, I think there was probably a lot of information at that point. Certainly, we believe Brian was at the home on that day. If Brian shares some of that information, maybe we can get him help, or, you know, start figuring some of those things out. So you start off with the relationship of these people aren't cooperating. They obviously hadn't heard from Brian, and I believe that there's a reason why I think they started. Well, let's go out and search. Let's do some of these things. So, yeah, I think it grew.
When they say that they want to go out and search, did Northport police officers have to be with them?
Not necessarily. I think the first time that Chris Laundrie came out, basically 2 weeks prior to, they did need to be with the Northport Police Department. It was closed. We were still actively out there on the ground. When they heard that the park was going to reopen, they wanted to go. It's free and open to the public. We just weren't going to let that happen.
When they find, you know, the remains and the backpack and everything, what's their reaction then?
So I'm not entirely clear. It's my understanding that Mr. Laundrie found like a dry bag type of deal. So you got a dry bag separate from a backpack. He finds this dry bag. Our officers were, I guess, not right in visual sight of him. You know, at times they were walking together. At times they were kind of with what I would consider within earshot. In this particular case, he finds something. He goes over. He tries to make contact with the officer. They eventually come together. The officer says, "Oh, that is interesting." Our officers begin looking that area a little bit more. They find the backpack and other remains. The family does not see that. They take a picture of the backpack. The family's now over here somewhere. They show him the picture. Does this look like Brian's backpack? It's my understanding that they confirm, though, that does look like Brian's backpack. They want to come look at everything else that's been found, and we tell them no, and that they need to leave.
What has this been like for this city?
Oh, boy. Don't use that. No. What has it been like for this city? It's probably been very hard. I mean, there are a lot of people that are prideful of Northport. People have lived here their entire lives. There's definitely been this, it's a negative situation to begin with. You have the death of a young lady. You have a potential murder on the loose, the mystery surrounding that. There's nothing positive to come from any of that. certainly the questions with how things have been handled and the timelines and some of that. You add that into the mix, it's heavy. There's a lot of pressure. People want answers from around the world. So, I mean, it's been a lot. I think that there is some relief that, but the potential of the light at the end of the tunnel here. Let's say what we need to say and continue to work the case and get as many facts as possible for the public's appetite and obviously more importantly for Gabby's family so that we can try to move on.
For those people that say, because you mentioned, the speculation going back and forth, for those people that say, oh, they should have taken Brian in right away, they should have never let him get away, what do you say to that?
Well, generally speaking, I'll say that we did everything within the law with all of the intentions of finding answers. We didn't know if we had a crime. We knew a crime didn't exist here, or we didn't think that a crime exists here in Northport. We didn't know what we had. We now know that despite probably all of that criticism, if we would have showed up, if Brian would have personally invoked his rights there, there's nothing we can do. We couldn't have taken him into custody. We didn't have anything to do that. Odds are, the way that it turned out probably still would have turned out that way. Odds are he would have walked out there if he wanted to on a Monday and done what he was intending to do.
Did you guys make contact with him, or was it just with his parents? Or
just his
the
parents.
Okay.
Just his parents.
Okay. Last question. You guys as officers see everything, right? More than the average person would see. How will this stick with all of you?
As far as which part?
The case and just, going through this whole process.
It's been an odd case. It's been a heavy case. The amount of eyeballs on it is frankly amazing. I think you learn something from everything. There's nothing that people here did wrong. There's nothing. If you would have been in the war room with the amount of people and resources we were utilizing, you saw the searches, you saw how much things were out there. I mean, nothing's going to be perfect, but all of the intent was appropriate. I'm good with it. There's going to be mistakes, but I think we're okay with our actions.